And welcome back to the Daily Dribble podcast, guys. As always, I'm your host, Nick Zammit, here back feeling fit and refreshed after a little week hiatus. Just had to take a bit of a reset as we enter the chaotic, festive period. It was nice just to have that week off, just to, as I said, reset, hit the brakes. It's been a bumper start to the year across the first couple of months of the season. So every now and again, you've got to just take your foot off the accelerator a little bit, unwind it, and enjoy the ride a little bit. I was kind of feeling a little burnt out, and if anyone has had that feeling before, the only way to kind of alleviate it is just to pump the brakes a little bit. So an opportune time to do that. That being said, certainly very excited for a big episode today. As I said, feeling fit, refreshed, and ready to go. Today, as I alluded to just then, we are entering the festive season. For some, the most magical time of year. Now, with that, what I'm going to do is have a bit of a look at some of the NBA teams, what's on their Christmas wish list this year, in my personal opinion. So I'll get into that momentarily. Got some very quick odds and ends to rip through. Also got my MVP of the week as well to conclude. But before we get into any of that, just want to give a big shout out to both Stadium Scene and The Cover, continuing to showcase all of my work here at the Daily Dribble, as well as a whole host of other content creators in and around Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Canada. Very, very appreciative of all their continued hard work and support. Likewise to all of you guys continuing, whilst in my little hiatus, continuing to tune into all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Really appreciate all that continued support. Continuing to get all your latest NBA and NBL news from the Daily Dribble. Alrighty, let's get into those very quick odds and ends, starting first and foremost with the news that the Orlando Magic are going to be without star Franz Wagner for an extended period of time. Now, he's suffered a very unfortunate injury, the same injury that befell Paolo Banchero with a torn right oblique. Now, he's out indefinitely at the moment. He's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks' time, but this is a huge loss. In Banchero's absence, he's stepped up big time, averaging 24.5 points, 5.6 rebounds, 5.7 assists, and 1.7 steals per game. He's been electric. The shooting percentages haven't been elite, but his ability to step up in big moments, probably no better example than a couple of weeks ago against the Lakers, hit, it wasn't a buzzer-beating three, but a three with a couple of seconds to go to ice that victory. Has been phenomenal stepping into that number one role, and he has been a guiding force, him and Banchero, to start the season, as to why the Magic currently sit third in the East with a 17-10 record. Now, it's a funny injury, this. The torn right oblique, it's commonly an injury that you see more from baseball players, pitchers in particular. But this is, it's becoming more and more common. We had Desmond Bain, Banchero, now Wagner. Certainly hoping that it's a speedy recovery. The Magic would undoubtedly be hoping this. And they'll be hoping that with the Banchero and Wagner coming back, it pushes them and correlates, their regular season record thus far, correlates into a deep playoff run. They made considerable strides last year. They're certainly building upon that this year. And if both their kind of two heavy hitters are back full force, feeling healthy, feeling fit, they're going to be a tough out. I certainly don't have them in that kind of top tier. They're borderline second tier in the Eastern Conference, you would say. But they're going to be fun. They're going to make some noise. And with that young core they've got at their disposal, very exciting times there in Orlando. In other news, the point guard CP3 officially became the second leading all-time assist scorer in the NBA. Passed this mark on Monday in their W versus the Pelicans, passing Jason Kidd's mark of 12,091 assists. Phenomenal stuff there. He's still chasing John Stockton with 15,806, which is just ludicrous. But it really has been an incredible career for Chris Paul. Across his 1,296 games within the league, he's averaged 9.3 assists per game. He has been the premier playmaker in the league for the best part of 2 decades. He's doing a great job of guiding this young Spurs team as well at the moment. You would certainly love to see them make a postseason appearance with him at the helm, Victor Wembanyama, Harrison Barnes, enough talent there. And I think he certainly deserves that. It seems unlikely that he's probably going to end his career with a ring. Probably one of the best players in league history to unfortunately end their career without a ring. But despite that, you'd love to see him in the postseason once again. And as I said, he certainly deserves that. A phenomenal achievement, though. As I said, passing that mark, 12,091 that Jason Kidd had. He's certainly, without a doubt, one of the greatest playmakers in the league history. And he's still going at the moment. Fantastic stuff there, and certainly warrants a place in the all-time list. Okay, finally. Now, I saw a stat the other day regarding the amount of threes that are being put up per game from teams at the moment. Now, across the last decade or two, we've certainly seen those numbers increase drastically. It made for there were a couple of little interesting takeaways I saw, though. Across the season thus far, the Denver Nuggets are taking the least amount of threes per game at 30.5 attempts. The top three was really fascinating. The Hornets were third with 43.1 attempts from three per game. Second was the Chicago Bulls at 43.5 attempts. And then out in the number one position, the Boston Celtics are shooting 51.4 threes per game. Crazy, crazy numbers, given that the Celtics only take 40 shots per game from two. Shows how much the game's continued to change over that last decade or two in particular, but even prior to that. It's just a really little fascinating stat. And as I said, if you're taking 40 attempts from, in that 2-point zone and 51.5 attempts from three, that's just absurd. But to the Celtics' credit, why they've been so potent, they're the reigning NBA champs. They make them at a really high clip. When you've got players like Tatum, Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, these guys are knocking them down with such great consistency. It's such a weapon. And law of averages, when you're putting up that many attempts and you shoot it like they do, more often than not, you're going to win games. But really fascinating stuff there that the Nuggets are shooting the least. You've got one of the best shooting big men, should I say. My goodness, you've had a shocker there. A little bit of ring rust, Nick. 30.5 attempts per game from the Nuggets. I thought that would have been higher. Murray putting them up. Jokic puts them up. Michael Porter Jr. puts them up. Russ, despite not making many, he puts them up. Fascinating stuff there. Nevertheless, let's push ahead, guys.
The Daily Dribble.
Okay, as I said, just before I went on week break last year, I was kind of starting to do a couple of segments focused around Christmas. And it's continued into this week, going through my team's Christmas wish list. A big part of Christmas, as we know, is giving and receiving. This week, I wanted to dive into the mind of some of the teams and assess what they might be asking Kris Kringle for this year. As I say, week in and week out, I would love to know your thoughts, what I got right, what I got wrong, or even what's on your Christmas wish list this year. The way I'm going, I'm expecting a big piece of coal. But as one of my favorite expressions goes, diamonds are made under pressure. Squeeze that bit of coal into a big old diamond, and I'm sure it'll be worth a pretty little penny there. Nevertheless, let's get into it. The first thing I had on my team's Christmas wish list was the Washington Wizards. Now, on their wish list, I would have to think would be a win. This team just seems to be immune to winning at the moment. They have the worst record in the league by a pretty considerable margin, and they're arguably on track to become one of the worst teams in league history. Now, they had a very impressive win versus the Nuggets the other day that snapped their 16-game losing streak. But even despite that, they currently have a 3-19 record. The 1972, 1973 76ers have the worst record across an 82-game season. They finished with 9 wins and 73 losses. Could the Wizards potentially be worse? I think they would just surpass this. They're going to make very hard work of it. And it's kind of surprising. They've got some tidy players at their disposal. Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, Jonas Valanciunas, Malcolm Brogdon, Alex Sarr, the number 2 pick, Bub Carrington. Like, there's some talented players there, yet they just have an inability to win basketball games at the moment. They have a minus 16.2 point differential, and that's a pretty telling factor as to why they're losing games. At the moment, teams' eyes are just lighting up when you see the Wizards on your schedule. It almost feels like a given win. As I said, crazy that they somehow got across the Nuggets the other day. But for the Wizards, it feels like on their wish list would just be a win. Their season's over, but just get bums in seats to give the fans something to cheer for at the moment. They would certainly be hoping for a win. Speaking about the aforementioned Denver Nuggets, on their Christmas wish list would be a winning bench. Now, the Nuggets currently sit 7th at 12-10 on the season, 5.5 games back of first at the moment. They would be considerably better off if their bench was more competent. As soon as their starters go off the floor, Jokic in particular, they fall apart. Russell Westbrook, Dario Saric, Jordan Strawther, it's an average bench. Tyson there, Pickett, not household names by any stretch of the imagination. They're just not getting it done. Especially with Jamal Murray not firing, Aaron Gordon out injured, should I say. Their biggest concern is absolutely their bench. They've had games that they've dropped a considerable amount of games being let go by how poorly their bench has performed. Very often in the plus minus do you see them minus, anywhere from about 9 to 17, this bench unit. They just have such a big swing. Certainly not expecting them to come out and greatly enhance what's going on from the starting lineup, but they just need to keep it closer. Because the starters are doing a pretty admirable job. As I said, Jokic is having arguably one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. If you look at PER, he effectively is having the best season in NBA history. But there's only so much you can do. Starters are holding their own, getting themselves into winning positions, but the bench are giving it all back and then some when they come on. So Denver will certainly be hoping for Christmas they get a change in fortunes, get some better productivity, get some better output, and I'm sure that'll coincide with them winning more games as well. On to the Toronto Raptors. On their Christmas wish list, somewhat similar to the Washington Wizards, but for them would be a road win. Now, despite sitting 14th, the Raptors aren't that bad. I think when everyone's healthy, there's actually enough to like about them. Unfortunately, as like many teams this season, they haven't been healthy throughout. But with RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, Grady Dick, Jakob Poeltl, that's like a pretty solid core they've got there. At home this season, they're 6-7. Now, that's certainly admirable. But on the road, they are 1-11. That's just not going to cut it. Currently 3 games back of a playing spot at the moment. If they can get everyone healthy and can jag a couple of road wins, they're certainly in the mix for a playing spot. Whether they want that or not, it's a pretty strong draft class. I'm sure many teams will start shipping it in pretty early this season. But the Raptors, with that core that I mentioned, as I said, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Jakob Poeltl, Grady Dick, that could be competitive in a play-in to playoff series. I don't think they go real deep, but I don't know, they can make some waves. They'll make it difficult for some teams on any given night, but they really need to address that road situation. 6-7 at home, fair play, nearly 500, no problems. 1-11 on the road. If you're getting that to even, 12 games, 4-8, you're winning a third of those games, you're in the plane. So address that. Hopefully the festive season brings some good tidings, and hopefully they can start racking up a couple of road wins. For the New Orleans Pelicans, on their Christmas wish list would be less injuries. Now, they're a team at the moment that just can't buy a trick. I was super high on them heading into the season. I really liked the idea of them on both ends of the floor. Unfortunately, from the word go, injuries have derailed them, probably more so than any other team within the league. Actually, to be fair, this year, the league as a whole, I can't remember a season where there'd been more injuries. But the Pelicans have certainly been probably on the worst end of it thus far. At the time of speaking, they sit at the bottom of the Western Conference with a 5-20 record, 8 games back already of even a play-in spot. And barring a miracle, their season kind of feels over already as well. Unfortunately, it comes off news during the week. It just kind of, adds to how poorly things are going at the moment. They're in New Orleans. That Brandon Ingram suffered a significant low left ankle sprain. He's sidelined indefinitely at the moment. And yeah, it never rains, it pours. Their 3 former All-Stars there in Ingram, Zion, and DeJounte Murray have yet to play a game together. And yeah, as I said, their season feels over. Barring a miracle, nothing's going to come of this season. As I said, the idea of them was Zion, Ingram, Murray, McCollum, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy. That was really exciting. I really liked what I saw on paper from this team heading into the season. Unfortunately, teams on paper don't win games. Bodies on the floor do, and they just haven't had the bodies. So they'll certainly be hoping for Christmas to receive less injuries. And finally, to the Miami Heat. On their Christmas wish list would be Tyler Herro to keep being the guy that he is at the moment. Now, he has been on an absolute heater. Kind of feels like a passing of the torch at the moment there in Miami. For so long, this has unequivocally been Jimmy's team. He's the kind of the team talisman, puts the team on his shoulders, and they'll go as far as he takes them. It's feeling, and it's kind of been brewing for a while, but it feels like it's becoming Herro's team. Currently on the season, he's averaging 24 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and he's shooting at 42.2% from 3. He's the guy. He's the guy at the moment who's prepared to put this team on his back, be aggressive, make things happen, and he's guiding them to wins at the moment. The Heat are certainly surpassing my expectations in the early days of the season so far. I didn't have high hopes for them. But that being said, they're performing pretty well there in the East. They currently sit 5th with a 12-10 record. Certainly overs to where I had them. But a big part of that is that output from Herro. So they'll certainly be hoping for that. Whether it will continue or not is another question, but they'll certainly be hoping for it. And I think now we've seen a big enough sample size to suggest that it will. And I'm loving it. He's playing lights out basketball at the moment. And I think the Miami Heat would certainly benefit from him being that number 1 guy permanently. So that's what I think is on their Christmas wish list. Guys, there you have it. We've rattled through a couple of teams there. The Washington Wizards, the Denver Nuggets, the Toronto Raptors, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Miami Heat. Kind of going through, in my opinion, what will be on their Christmas wish list. Would love to hear from you all, though, what I got right here, what I got wrong, what you would change. As I said at the top, what's on your Christmas wish list? Would love to hear your thoughts, guys. Alrighty, let's push ahead.
The Daily Dribble.
After a bit of a hiatus into my MVP of the week, a team or player, or really anything that stood out to me on the court and is befitting of being my MVP. And this year, I've gone, this week, should I say, not for the year, but this week, I've gone the Dallas Mavericks. Now, I've based this on, it comes prior to their loss yesterday versus the OKC Thunder. So I'm not including that in what I'm about to say. But the Mavs are currently 16-8 on the season. They've won 7 in a row. 9 of their last 10 have a plus 7.7 point differential, sitting 4th in the West, 2.5 games back of first, and half a game back of second. They were a team that people very early across the first couple of weeks of the season, after a slow start, were already riding off. Yet I certainly don't think they're getting the credit they deserve. It was absolutely a slower start than many people expected. You were integrating new pieces though. But I think they are looking super, super, super competent at the moment. Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes have come in, fit in seamlessly. Luka's playing MVP level basketball. Kyrie Irving's that perfect 1B. The only thing that you could say has been a little bit disappointing is what Clay's delivered thus far. But given the caliber of shooter he is, you know that eventually he's going to break out of his slump and just catch fire. The Mavs will certainly be hoping that kind of, maybe he holds off during the regular season. He's saving all his good shots for the postseason. But they're certainly on a heater at the moment. As I said, probably not getting the credit they deserve at the moment. Hence, I wanted to shine a little bit of a light on them. But certainly keep an eye on them. They're charging their way up the standings at the moment. As I said, up in fourth at the moment. But certainly expect them to go a little bit higher over the coming weeks. So they are rightfully so my MVP of the week, the Dallas Mavericks. Guys, appreciate you tuning in. Big episode. A lot to get through after that week break. For myself, it's always the first one back. It takes a little bit of time to settle back into it. But the plan for next week is we're a fair portion into the season. About a third of the way, give or take, for most teams. I kind of want to go through some of my pre-season predictions, some of my takes, some of my predicted standings players, things of the kind, and go through and assess what were some of the things I got right thus far and what I got wrong. I'm certainly expecting a lot of egg on my face for some of them, but certainly, hopefully, on some of them, I look like a bit of a genius and that I just don't babble bullshit. I do most of the time, but nevertheless, we'll go through and assess that. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to the show, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watching this one on YouTube. Be sure to like, comment, do all of that great stuff. Share it with a friend. Would certainly mean a lot to me. Nevertheless, till next week, guys, have a fantastic week. Enjoy the build up to Christmas. It's certainly coming around very quickly. Less than a fortnight to go now, which is very exciting. Looking forward to seeing the big man fit his fat white ass down the chimney. But that's certainly something to look forward to as well. So enjoy all the prep towards Christmas, guys. And I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Till then, remember, as always, be good. And if you can't be good at it. See you guys.